Hello and welcome back to the Double Swing. It's been a little while. Obviously, the last episode we put out was for the end of the Blast Austin Major, and since then, well, it's been a bit quiet, hasn't it? It's been the off-season, the roster mania, the big break, and then we did have Fisher, but we gave that one a miss. We were actually rather disappointed, I think, when we saw the teams that actually accepted the invites. We were hoping that'd be a little bit of a bigger deal, but everyone took their full time off, and they're coming back into Cologne to really get the season started on a bang. Quickly recap what happened in Austin. The final show was for the playoffs, as I mentioned. I took 2 points from my Vitality pick. A lot of the other picks, though, went wrong. My FaZe underdog pick, they let me down. They lose straight away to Mongols. YouM3 didn't have that belief in the Mongols. Picked Furia. They end up taking that L, and Spirit as well. Upset, I guess, by Mousesports. I think for a lot of us, we were hoping that the Spirit form would continue what they showed us in the flashes and the small events they played leading up to this event. We thought that'd carry over, but instead, we're stuck here. You have 0 points from that event. We've given the viewers the 2 points for the Vitality pick just because we know you lot wanted Vitality. They were the clear consensus #1 team overall. But yeah, since then, roster mania. YouM3, what's your takeaway with all this?
Yeah, just that, for damn sure nobody was going to pick the Mongols going into that final. You're right. I didn't believe in them, but I'm happy for them all the same. The rise has been great to watch. And roster mania, yeah, it's kind of been interesting to keep tabs on because I almost thought there would be more shifting of pieces. I think we've had quite a lot of movement in the sort of tier 2 and sort of 1.5 teams that are clamoring for position. I guess G2 is the one that's sort of the most high profile, I suppose, of them. But yeah, weirdly, I thought there would just be more movement. But I'm not sure what I was expecting, but I was expecting more than what's kind of already happened. Kind of excited to see what Mikaze's like on Na'Vi, though, because I think that's probably the one I'm keeping my eye out for the most.
Yeah, he's a player I've profiled. He's a player I've watched a lot of. And when the move starts being talked about, people start, asking me my opinion on Na'Vi changes. And they talk to me about Mikaze coming up. They're like, oh, who do you want to come in for? And how do you think they'll play? And I'm always like, I don't really know. Because he's not really a player that Na'Vi have played with in terms of their style recently. It's not really been a team that's had this sort of incredibly hard, dedicated opener who's just constantly, throwing himself out into fights. Like, the way he takes mid control on that Academy side doesn't really line up with the way Na'Vi like to approach their T sides. So, whilst he will fit like a glove, obviously, into CT positions, just play some star roles, go out and frag, the T side will be a curiosity for me. I was hoping for like a 2-man change. We rethink our philosophy in terms of how we're going to play. But instead, it's a 1-for-1. Probably going to see a lot of the same stuff out of Na'Vi. But if they can polish it up to, a perfect shine, it might still be hyper effective. Like, we've seen them execute really high level stuff. So hopefully it works out. But Mikaze, monster fragger. That'll be fun to watch.
I think it's just the most different. Obviously Spirit are picking up Jouet and Falcons are going with Kyosuke, and I think those two teams are obviously going to be very interesting to watch those developments as well, mainly to see if Kyosuke can actually perform, whether Jouet kind of keeps up the numbers that he actually hasn't had for like the longest amount of time.
It's sort of like a late explosion, isn't it? Into this.
Yeah. So will that actually translate well? These are teams with greater expectations. I think the Na'Vi one is just the most interesting because that roster seemed to be like deteriorating very rapidly, and so maybe this is the way that they kind of bring themselves back, kind of a la the G2 moves. But those are for stage 2 and not stage 1 of Cologne.
Stage 1, we do have a lot of those, as you said, tier 2, tier 1.5 teams who make big shifts. We have Heroic here, who have switched out a couple players and now look entirely different. They're now a Swedish core with 2 Belarusian players. I think boasting the most Belarusian players on one team in the top 50 since that name Ega side, like that once was. Like, that's a pretty rare occurrence. We got the newly adjusted NIP with their ex-Kaspersky acquisition. He returns home. There's a number of interesting moves here. FlyQuest was as well making changes. So we'll have to sort of judge which ones we actually like the most, which ones we are feeling cursed by, because some of us not always biggest fans of certain moves. Let's put it that way. We haven't even decided who's going to be taking first pick. It is going to be a full 8 teams drafted in this episode, so there's a lot to pick from. YouM3, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I'll start, and I'll start with a favorite first. It's tough actually for me because my heart wants to go with the Fisher result, But then also, I do wonder about whether or not that's sustainable in the long term.
Do it.
Whatever. I see their side of the bracket. I'm picking Tyloo first. They're a favorite. They're in the top 8 somehow in this conversation, which is kind of great for Asian Counter-Strike. They come off of a great win at that Fisher tournament where they have to win 3 maps over the 5 of Astralis in the final. And they did so without losing a single series throughout their entire run in Fisher. I don't know what has kind of gotten into this Tyloo camp, but JamYoung is on fire. I mean, he was on fire for that entire event. And from matchup to matchup, I was like, wow, he's had a great game. I don't think he'll be able to keep it up. And then sure enough, he gets another plus 30 the next game and the next game. And I'm just thinking, what is even happening? Because the shots he was hitting, I'll be completely frank. Tyloo did not look the most organized at this event. They did not have the cleanest strategies. They did not have the cleanest reads all the time. But God, did they shoot their way out of some really precarious situations and scenarios? And a lot of that was JamYoung or Mosea or, honestly, Attacker sometimes with his clutching and like the weird X Factor rounds he seems to be able to pull together. This Tyloo team just seemed to have this weird, sort of newfound belief. And I'm wondering if that's the rising tide, raising all ships type of angle of the Mongols make it to a major final. I mean, Tyloo, the Mongols, Rare Atom, Linvision, all these teams, they've been hovering and, putting up solid results against the Mongols for the longest time. They knew that they were above them. But when you put it into perspective of, hey, well, we play these guys all the time, we run them close, they made it to a major final. Like, why can't we be as good as that? And I do wonder if that's just added this extra fire to them, because I'm kind of hoping that is the case. And that's where a lot of my hopes lie with this Tyloo first pick.
China are becoming sort of the vibes kings of Counter-Strike. Like in between, Amelia at the major, we all remember that. The excitement, the drive, the hype, G's interviews left, right, and center. There's all this sort of positivity brewing in the Chinese scene. And Tyloo, I think, has been a clear sort of benefactor of that confidence. And you're right, they haven't played perfect CS. They haven't played the most prime strategies or any of that nonsense. But a great example, it's an Inferno map, I forget against who, that they played at this event. It might have been in 3D Max.
Okay.
It might have been. And they are defending the A bomb site. They lose the first 2 openings. It's 3v5. The rotation was ahead of schedule. They were so confident in their read. 2 players are rotating in through CT, through the smoke that's been placed to block off long, and a player's already halfway down banana. Those 2 players both swing. One gets traded out 1 for 1, and the other one just goes 2 for 1, just straight ripping heads. And you're like, this round was completely screwed, but they hauled ass over the second they thought they had a read, and then just swung and hit the shots at such an alarmingly fast rate. Like it's insane how deep this team is with talent, with just insane firepower. JamYoung is the best amongst them, and that's not to detract from the others. It's just, we're talking about a player who JamYoung, if he keeps playing like this, we're talking, I mean, I tweeted he's already this year for me, arguably top 15 as far as riflers. This level of output, if he can do it consistently, I mean, I'm sure someone like HLTV will talk about EVPs and all this other bollocks, but raw eye test, who are the best like 5 to 10 riflers in the world, is already in that conversation, and he could be climbing higher if he keeps playing like that. It was insane. I'm talking, like, the most impressive clip from him for me was a nuke against Astralis. They're in a pretty awkward sort of 2v3. He swings out of heaven, gets 2 ridiculously fast headshots. Third player from Astralis is unknown, but he just immediately, it's like sort of unknown, you can kind of guess, and he kind of just reads that he could be swinging out around silos to headshot him, and he just immediately ducks and hides. And I'm like, there was 0 actual info on that, like actual read, but he just instinctively understood this is where this goes wrong. This is where that 2v1 I've now created becomes a 1-on-1, and it's a coin flip at that point. No. Ducks, hides, plays it out with his teammate, free kill at the end of it. It was insanely mechanically, like, just perfect. Like, how does he hit those shots so quick? But then the actual understanding of the game, the read in the moment, in that high pressure scenario, to then just duck, That's the sort of thing that wins you events. Like, that's the sort of play that actually translates at every level and will continue to win you games, no matter how good your opposition are. If you're able to understand the positions and the situations you're in at that level, you're just going to win. And yeah, Tyloo looking so confident and so ripe for the picking. This is a great pick.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about Jamyoung and his career is that first off, yes, it's true he did try to go to Valorant for a bit and it didn't work out. Fine, happy that planned out that way, but he's been touted as the talent that's needed to raise China sort of through the rankings for quite some time. From when he was first brought in at Vici to his time on Rare Atom to like staying with the core under Advent. We always saw the potential for him to be good, but not this type of good. This is the first real foray we're seeing into a more aggressive, actually more proactive Jamyoung, and that's largely due to the shift in responsibilities with Mercury calling. Mercury used to be the more aggressive piece alongside someone like Mosea. Jamyoung almost always was a lurker, and for him now to be like this aggro, like space taking rifler, we're starting to actually see him flourish in a way that kind of for most of his career he's not been like, and it's weird to think that he was maybe underutilized in a lurking position because he used to do really well in that spot, but it's now just like I guess with CS2 it is just a different beast, and we're seeing a different Jamyoung as a result of the responsibility swaps that they've had to make in terms of finding Mercury as the in-game leader now. So it's just strange. It's cool to see the transformation over time.
Yeah, he's sort of that guy. Just if you look at the profiling numbers, it's hilarious because he kind of is on T side. Just holy, sorry, some obnoxiously loud engine just outside the window. He's kind of just filling out every single role. Like he's got like a good opening rate. Like he's clearly being set up for those manufactured openings, as I've started calling them, because it makes more sense to call them that. He's trading out players, so he's clearly not just hard entry dying off the back of it as well. And then he also has crazy clutch stats, partially because he just wins a lot of clutches if he's ever in them. So he's just that well-rounded, modern sort of star rifle that you love to see, that if you have one, you need to use to their fullest. And I know some teams get it wrong. They see a player like sort of start to thrive in an opening setting. They're like, he's our entry now. And you're like, what a waste. What a waste. A part of what makes this player so good is his understanding of the fights, the angles. He can then also trade. He can close. He can do it all. And yeah, Jamyoung is become that guy for Tyloo. Yeah, they've been fun. They've been amazing. I really like this pick.
It's just strange because he used to always just be like an apps lurker on Inferno, and now he's like the banana space taker. It's just completely different person. So
yeah.
Now feels like the right time.
No, I mean that's always been one of them. Inferno T-side roles have always been one of the most confusing things, because I see players like Kensizor annoys the crap out of me because he's like a hard entry on like every map, and then he's like, Inferno, time for me to go into apps, I guess. Like, why? This doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But yeah, that's a banger pick. I've got to. Obviously, I'm looking at the favorite section and I hate it. Like, am I crazy? Like, is this just outside of Tyloo because they're the rising stars of the scene? Am I right in thinking this is just a bit of a weak sort of group? Like,
it does feel that way a bit. I have some favorites I'm interested in though.
Yeah, there's a couple teams I'm going to pick. Like, I mean, I've also been, getting back into my old betting ways, and there's a couple teams I've bet to make it out of this. So I think it'd be quite easy for me to pick them, justifying to myself. But there's just been some cracks shown by some of these rosters, some of these newer teams. I'm actually going to take the team that played Tyloo in that grand final. I'm going to take Astralis. They have been reborn in a way under Huxi, who, when you Huxi in Danish with riflers who are talented but need a bit of guidance, some reason, just seems to work time and time again. I mean, I'm sure it'd work in English as well if he'd ever worked with a rifler who wasn't Nico. Like, if that wasn't his style rifle. Someone who would listen to the IGL and not have their own ideas. I think he'd have done a bit more, even if it wasn't as Nico aesthetically, like, pleasing. The way he managed to get players, like, clicking in Copenhagen Flames, slowly started to manufacture itself here. Like, it's... Yabi's feeling confident, he's hitting shots. Stown has actually had a decent run, and most importantly, the player who's trading Huxi, in a lot of cases, the pack player who comes in with him, Stare, has thrived. I mean, they finally got to the grand final and then choked it away in pure Danish fashion. And that's why I said on Monday, they are now, as they should be, the best Danish team. Not just by default, but they are legitimately like a playoff threat. They could make that sort of run. They play good CS. They have a lot of different talented pieces, but no one's really in sort of like top 3 player in the world talks. There's no one that talented, you know. And they're choking when it matters most. Like, they are so Danish. So give them a couple years, they might win a major, but for now, they'll have to make do with top 4s, top 8s, maybe a grand final here and there if the field is weak enough, given the state of the scene is so top heavy. But no, this Astralis team are finally looking confident, and I think that's a big part of this. I mean, it's all well and good to talk about strats, it's all well and good to talk about the minutia, the macro, the structure, all this other stuff we love to discuss, but if you're not looking like yourselves, you're not feeling yourself on the server, you're often going to underperform. Astralis playing up to the expectations, I guess, of the star names they have, even if they didn't win against Tyloo. I still think this is an Astralis team that's worth betting on right now.
Yeah, it's cool that the Stown Yabi combo does seem to be thriving a little bit more under Hooksy, and Device looks good as well. You know, if in the world where Stare is your fourth worst player on the team, like, I actually just think
best.
that sorry, fourth best. Yes.
Yeah.
I do think it is just nice that, you know, you have a good diversity of skill sets amongst the pack of riflers, and, you know, you get a Device that's a bit more free flowing than he was when he was playing with Cadian, for example. You know,
yeah.
I have never really, I guess, rated Hooksy that highly. I think one of the things I always liked about the way that he and the Copenhagen Flames used to play is that they were a bit more like pack entry, bursty, and a bit more free flowing in that capacity. Always thought their CT sides were a little stiff and static, but I think just over time I've seen Hooksy's calling on CT sides actually be far more dynamic and far more. I think there's been a little bit more onus given to his players to be kind of responsible for their sides of the map. But I think when you look at that Tyloo grand final, there were actually quite a few moments where, you know, it was clear that they almost needed a plan B or a plan C, and it's, you know, still early in Hooksy's tenure with this squad to say, like, hey, if this keeps happening in big stage moments, someone has to be like the central nervous system to get everything back on track and, you know, get to look more cohesive, because there are several moments in that Astralis run at Fisher where you can see they're just not. They don't communicate as efficiently as they probably should for a team that are all speaking the same language and, you know, should actually be more familiar with each other. There's several moments of chaos that do kind of break down, but it is early and they already look very good, even all that considering. So yeah. I am a little bit annoyed at you picking Astralis because I was hoping to snag him. Anyone that looks at our Counter-Strike stocks talks, I've been investing in I've been investing in Astralis quite heavily. So I would have picked them here as well.
Yeah, look, they've now had back-to-back events where they finished runners-up. You know, Astana, they finished second to Spirit, and then here they finished second to Tyloo. I mean, clearly, it's just they can't quite do it, right? You think second place to Spirit, who's your next grand final opponent? Tyloo should be winnable. Not quite there. Not quite there.
It's just disappointing as a big Stare maxer over here that he actually may have had his worst series yet in that final. So
yeah, no, when Hooksy's your top fragger, I don't care who the rest of the team is, you've got a problem. Like that's a real issue that needs addressing.
Hooksy had a great event, to be honest. He actually genuinely
he ends the event like 1.01 rated or something. I was just looking up the overall stats. Yeah, 1.01 rated. His KPR's over 0.6. Look at him go. Like, the little engine that could. Hooksy on the frag.
Yeah.
Obviously, entrying like crazy, but hey, it all counts. It all works. And yeah, he got a great deal out of the guys up until that grand final, which, like, that's where we needed it. Just that extra bit. Someone needed to match some of that Jam Young explosiveness, and no one quite could. But no, Astralis, I think, are a surefire team to get out this stage.
Okay, are we 1-2ing, or are we
We'll just go back
drafting?
and forth. If we snake draft, I mean, I guess it'd be like, I know I always see people getting mad when people don't do snake drafts in 1v1s, but I'm like, it's not that crazy of like a stacked field. Like I'd only do it if it was like number one was so good you needed 2 picks, right, to make up for it, right? I don't really feel like that's the case.
Now do I go for ugly or uglier?
How much liquor you got?
I'm gonna go with another favorite. I'm gonna go with Furia.
Okay.
They looked pretty bad at that Fisher event, which is
Yup.
why I wasn't really sure if I should pick them. The thing is, you know, moving in with this Furia team for, what was it, Dallas first, or was it was Astana into Dallas. It was awesome to see the way that they had constructed the team. You know, bringing Molodoy, bringing Nikindar, allowing Molodoy kind of the freedom to move around the map, but kind of setting up Nikindar for entries. I think that was always the most frustrating thing about watching him entry on VP and then watching him entry on Liquid, is that because he had been so mistreated on VP, I don't think he actually even understood that he needed to be set up for entry sometimes. Like, VP would genuinely leave him by himself, no one anywhere near to throw flashes sometimes, and they'd just be like, Yakindar, go and find an entry, and if you don't, we might end up saving, actually.
It's weird, and the reason VP was so dangerous for a bit is because he kind of worked. Like, he kind of made it happen, and you're like, this is disgusting, but obnoxious. Like, it's what are you going to do if they just, like, they don't even put anything into it, yet you're still losing a man as a defense. You're like, we just can't, the value proposition we have against that is just minute.
And the thing that was always so frustrating is that, you know, sometimes he would be alone, and then sometimes the whole team would be behind him. But either way, he'd be like contact entering into one side of the map, and you're like, is this an execute, or is this just him being a weird lurking nuisance? So it's nice that, you know, he's being set up a bit more in this Furia team, because I think Fallen at least understands that entries need to be facilitated. And then we get to Fisher, and we're just kind of moving into like quick bursts into executes a lot, and maybe more so than you should. And I wonder if that was because they were against a team like Seoul twice, that they thought they should do that, but they lost to it twice. I just don't get.
Yeah.
I didn't quite understand the logic of what they were approaching this Fisher event with, and maybe they were just seeing it as kind of a warm up into Cologne. I think that's a valid way to look at a tournament in the off season, is, you know, just a way to get suitable practice. You know, Big, for example, did the IESF EECE. I don't even remember what it was called.
It was the European Esports Federation's European Championships. Of
That's
course,
the one.
Won by Team Lithuania, which was
Of
the
course.
big shock. And on the women's side, name any of the finalists.
I wasn't watching.
Sexist. Anyway.
I couldn't even name you the Team Lithuania team.
I know you couldn't.
I'll be honest. Yeah. So that, I mean, Big, for example, did that, and then now they also went to Fisher, and they've, you know, Big are looking terrible. Anyway, that's a side tangent. Yeah, I think I was just looking at this Furia team, and I just still want to believe in the growth proposition for both Molodoy and Yakindar coming back, as well as, you know, the space that it allows Kesarado and Yuri to actually almost change the way that they are as players. Like, Kesarado and Yuri shouldn't be sort of a cleanup crew to bring the rounds back into favor. That was always the sort of Furia MO. They should be, you know, set up in more traditional roles. Maybe it's the death of the aggressive Furia style that lastly dies with the Kesarado and Yuri shift, but when you have pieces that are so much more refined in the things that they're good at in like Yakindar and Molodoy, you should be able to refine yourself as well into a particular niche. So I just want to continue believing in the Furia role shifts and balances that they have.
I don't know. I do have the same sort of assumption that you kind of hinted at there, where it's like they didn't take Fisher overly seriously. Like, 'cause I didn't really feel like I was watching the same Furia side I'd seen for a bit. Now, if this is them implementing their playstyle and trying to, you know, get stricter with things, it's back to their idea of how CS should be played. off the back of, Yekindar's new, let him have an opinion. And, oh, Molodoi, he's, new to this English language sort of CS, and he's coming from tier 3, like, maybe we'll let him float a bit more. Maybe if this is them implementing their idea of how the game should be played, we should just, like, smack them. Like, just
Let's
on
just
the hand,
not do
like,
that,
no
actually.
touch, no touch, no touch. That's really not how you want to play. Yeah, Molodoi, you'd be on the surface. You'd be like, oh, look, Molodoi, his events, they keep getting stronger. You're like, he slapped the shit out of Wildcard and then wasn't able to do a whole lot in most of the maps against Saw. Just got to bring it back down to earth. Everyone was able to absolutely destroy Wildcard. That's kind of the freebie of the group they were in, because Wildcard have decimated themselves. I mean, look, even Kersey had a nice rating against Wildcard. Like, everyone's going to have a fun time against that team right now. They're just in a terrible spot. So I worry about the fact that they couldn't even get a win against Saw until I see Saw make the semi-final, and I'm like, all right, it's one of those things. It's a Muterus thing. Like, it makes no sense. His team's somehow gotten worse, yet he's still winning. It's Muterus.
Yeah.
There's no other way to look at it. So, I don't know. I think they still have the win conditions they had before. They still have an insane amount of talent. They should be quite likely to make it out of this section. It's just, I'm just going to give you a hint of some odds I've seen online for teams to make it out this stage. Furia has better odds than GamerLegion, which I find almost alarming. Like,
but
there's a
I
lot
don't
of,
find that too disagreeable either.
I kind of, I find it hard to bet against, even though what I saw from GameLegion wasn't a great start. I always find it hard to bet against Ash versus this kind of field.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I agree.
Like, this is just not where I expect him to fall down. So, no, it's a weird spot. It's a hard, I think, set of teams to judge as far as who's going to do what exactly off the back of Fisher. But I think Furia, just in terms of the pedigree, the players, you have to give them that vote of confidence.
Yeah, I think as well, before we continue trucking along in these teams, something else that's important to note is that coming into Cologne, we are moving in with no Anubis, and we have Overpass back.
Yeah.
And in our discussions with, the teams that we've had so far, Tyloo, Astralis, Furia, even the brief mention of GamerLegion, all of these teams have traditionally been very good at Overpass as well. I think that's something that is important to note. Fallen always used to love Overpass. I mean, I guess, Yakindar, Molodoi, I don't actually know too much about the way that they'll approach Overpass. I guess
I think Molodoi's played a HLTV map of Overpass, has he? Like,
I'd be surprised if he hasn't.
Oh, he has. He played one.
Yeah.
At the 1xBet QRK Cup 2024 with all winners against Exavangar.
Of course.
How
could we forget?
That piece of history that everyone watched with such... Yeah. I mean, Pumpkin 6-6 at a bad event. We all remember that, obviously. But he was carried through by Defizer and Tasman. Molodoi put up a great effort, but it's one of those all-winners games where Dementa and Kumau just didn't quite bring the rifle heat that they usually do. I'm only half making this up because I did look into this all-winners roster before. Like, I do know who Kumau and Dementa are. I'm just making everything up about the Exavangar roster.
But so yeah, unsure about how everything's gonna mesh together. But like, Furia used to play a bunch of Overpass. Fallen likes Overpass.
It's a good Orpus map as well. Like,
But if Molodoi doesn't have the most reps, will he know how to do it the best? Will Fallen actually for a while actually try and AWP instead? It's not like Molodoi can't rifle.
Shouldn't though. He's that good on AWP.
Yeah, but also Fallen on Overpass positionally, he does actually play the map quite well. I will say. I think that was always one of his better performing maps.
It was. I mean, one of the all-time great demos is between two players who were here at Fisher. It's Astralis device versus Fallen, not on Furia, on Overpass, and it's one of the like textbook device demos where you should watch it like, okay, kids, this is how you AWP on the T side of Overpass, like setting himself up perfectly for all the picks, all the lines Fallen's going to use. Like, it was great. But no, it's one of those maps where you can have a true AWP battle, with the distances that are available to you. You can go to war.
Yeah, but what I was ultimately getting to is that, with all these teams that we're talking about, we have to also consider the shift in the map pool as well, because some teams will have been, a little bit more reliant on maps like Anubis, and some will have more familiarity with overpasses as it comes in, even if it's, I guess, relatively fresh, per se.
Yeah,
So
so much has
something to
changed.
consider. Yeah. Well, Heaven's changed a little bit, and that's about it, actually.
It's so they've done nothing. It's
They
just
took the water out.
it looks different. It looks a bit different, and even then, it's been available in Wingman for so long that I'm kind of used to it now. That I've forgotten that it's actually slightly different to the Go version of
Yeah.
Overpass.
They were like, "Oh, the water is bugged and it's causing a bunch of problems. We're just gonna remove all the water, actually,
It's fair enough,
and
to
we're
be
gonna
honest.
shift. Yeah, we're just gonna change heaven slightly. So yeah, not
Yeah.
much has actually changed, but I think
Practical
what I
gameplay
really,
wise, some stuff's
yeah,
changed.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
just CS2, right? It's not really Overpass.
It'll be more about the sort of maturity of how people use the smoke break interactions, and
Yeah.
the same stuff we've had basically on every map in the pool so far. So
Yeah.
just be small moments like that.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Hopefully, for some of these teams we're picking, they end up thriving on it. But yeah, Overpass, great map to be added back. Terrible idea to remove Anubis, but that's something for a different
Agreed.
show.
Yeah, agreed.
Entirely different show. I'm going to pick an underdog now, because why would I waste my time picking favorites? You can't touch them anymore. Let's take a look. Okay, I do like this pick. I was considering a couple teams, and these two teams actually play each other straight out the gate in stage 1, I believe. That's Heroic and NIP, yep. I'm going to take NIP. So this is, in theory, Heroic should be the favorite in this game. Like, we're just looking at what we've seen from the core in last season, the quality of player this roster actually boasts. You're like, oh crap, Nilo, Antonir, and Grix. And we've seen this Linus youngster duo just constantly thriving in tier 1, tier 1.5 sort of level play with this this style they have. But I watched Fisher, and the questions I had were not answered in a pleasing way. Because my big problem when you remove a player like xCloud, who's hyper aggressive and constantly going for the opening, constantly challenging the map control, you can rely on him to go and do that. My question was, if Nilo's taking those spots, or Tnir is taking those spots, or a combination of the two are trying to fill in all his responsibilities, will I have a reliable, definitive me when I need someone to go do it? Like, or do I have to be like, oh, hopefully one of them feels up for it this time, or maybe one of them has the best spawn, or whatever is in their head in terms of what they need to go and be aggressive and challenge that map control. I have this weird feeling that they didn't quite get that right. Like, there's not that pecking order established truly. And Nilo seemed to be the one who's primarily taking the aggressive sort of space taker responsibilities. I feel like he's not really that player. As much as he can do it, and he is mega talented, he's not the snappy first bullet headshot ripping kind of guy. He's very much I've made this positional play and I got an advantage through this lurk, and you didn't even expect to have to fight me. Like, there's a lot of cerebral play that I think Nilo thrives at that he doesn't really get the opportunity to use when he's doing this. On the other hand, NIP, they've made a clear upgrade as far as Aros Dosh for X Casper Sky. Now, you could have put in X Casper Sky for Aros Dosh or you jerks. I would have been happy either way. Neither one has particularly thrilled me, especially on LAN. But here we are. Aros Dosh is the one to make way. And X Casper Sky's in. He's been fantastic on Ents. He was fantastic on Young Ninjas. I think they're just going to thrive. They've got a great caller in Snappy. I mean, I've been saying that since this roster was assembled. Like, if they had VRS out the gate, we wouldn't have had to wait till the very end of last year to see them at LANs, right? They would have just been one of the sort of top 20 teams in the world, point blank. Wrinkle is one of the most explosive, fantastic AWPing talents we have. Like, he's so dynamic, so forceful, I think is the best way to put it. When you watch his gameplay, sometimes it's like, there was no need to force the issue. They're like, you could have, if you're another AWPer, another AWPer, you'd have heard that, seen that, and been like, I'll just back off and hold this line. No. You're not going to call Wrinkle out. Like, you're not going to be like, oh, Wrinkle, you should hide. Don't challenge us. Like, no, he will. He will every time. And it's going to work because he's absolutely bonkers. So I love watching this team play. I haven't even talked about their Danish Terminator and Shush, who's just magically taken it another step up. They play a really strong style. They're led by a great IGL. I feel really confident in this team going into this entire season, not just this event. And I feel like they're going to be a staple again. I think NIP have been gifted their rebuild by getting Snappy. I think that's basically how it went down. Like you didn't have Snappy, you tried to do it again with a different IGL, or tried to let the org, the GMs, the coaches build something again. I think you would have struggled, but that Snappy knows how to build a roster that wins, and here we are.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of can't be understated just how far they've had to climb. I mean, the full rebuild was Snappy, Shush, U-Jerks with Wrinkle, and then Arozdosh. And now they've just recently replaced him with ex-Kaspersky, like you're mentioning. But the ranking shift they've had to go through over the past 6 months is absurd. Like,
Yeah.
And it's why Snappy has been very vocal about how messed up the VRS system is, and oh damn you, where are my open qualifiers? Where are my opportunities to climb the rankings? Because they needed to climb very rapidly if they wanted any conversation, if they wanted to get anywhere near the invite list for Cologne or the majors. They had to chew through a lot, and yeah, I mean it really cannot be understated how far they've had to go just to get to this point. Because I think there's a lot of teams that if you pulled them out of the ranking today and you gave them the same task of making it to the major, to the second major of the year, I think some would actually genuinely struggle. Like G2 is, I think, a prime example of a team that just would die.
Some teams would just get spanned, like they wouldn't go through it. Like NIP joined the VRS rank in February of this year at 170. They are now 24. Their peak VRS was 21. But they've had to do it through a lot of qualifiers and then just trying to min-max the LAN ratings that you can get.
Like, going to Fragadelphia and...
Yeah, just to get that LAN buff. Like, it's huge how important that is. Because if you look at their Fragadelphia, they get 197 points and 48 VRS spots. This is something we discussed with Stiko on Monday on Retake the Week, where we're talking about just playing these LAN events just to get the ELO, just get the VRS up, just so you can be in invite range for, hell, CCT playoffs. Like, you don't even... It's not like you're doing it to make the major, doing it to make Cologne. You're doing it so you can start not having to go through open qualifiers for CCT Cups. Like, that's how rough it is when you're that low down.
I remember, like, Epic LAN at the start of the year, there were inquiries after tickets already been sold out. Like, there was talks about, like, complexity going to Epic LAN in the UK. And I think... I wasn't sure if NIP were also part of that conversation, but because VRS is one of those things where you need the games to represent yourself, like there's a lot of teams that typically wouldn't look at these small lands as anything other than like, 500k BYOC tournament, who cares? You know, like genuinely, who cares? Online tournaments, bigger prize pool, more competition, whatever. Those are actually a great opportunity to raise yourself up. So, I mean, we've even seen that at this recent Epic LAN that we had in the UK, where Iberian Soul, Alex, Soul, Mopos, they won it with Smooya standing in with them. So, and you know, Bird from Sky was in the LAN hall singing karaoke after getting knocked out of the tournament. That's exactly what LAN's all about. Yeah. So, I think, you know, just circling back, I have a lot of respect for what NIP have done, and I do think this is a genuine upgrade where these players are having to punch well above their typical fragging numbers just to have gotten to this position in the first place. And, you know, I'm not expecting Shush to maintain this as the competition gets stiffer. I'm not expecting Wrinkle to actually get away with as much of his antics either. But I'm kind of hoping that with ex-Kaspersky or Kaspersky coming in, that all the successes that these two have been able to have, if he even shows like 60% of what he was getting on ends, this team just has a lot of lethality. There's a lot of weapons that Snappy can use to actually just outcall quite a lot of the teams that will be in attendance of events like Cologne. I think for me, I'm maybe anxious about this being the first real event with ex-Kaspersky, where I'm not expecting it to go too well. But come the second or third event with this NIP roster, I'm expecting the rest of the season to just continue to go up from there.
Yeah, it's a tough call to make. They are an underdog, but they come in, what's the second lowest ranked team not by VRS, but by HLTV ranking. Below Big, just above FlyQuest. I mean, I still find HLTV ranking a little more reliable in that sense. That's why we still use it for the seeding on this show. But I see them as a team who are already good, who made a change for a player who just wasn't good at all. Like, I don't see it getting any worse. I do think this will be a much stronger roster than expected at this event.
Sure. Yeah, I can't knock that.
All right, we're into the second half of the picks.
I can't remember if Snappy was ever great at calling an overpass, but that's...
I don't really... I mean, you'd have to... My memory isn't that great. I'd have to go back pretty far.
Mine neither.
Like, we're talking Falcons era. Like,
yeah.
The last time we saw him on that map, that is.
God, who do I even pick in the underdogs category? You
can go to a land down under.
I know, but I don't know if you're ever gonna pick them. Is my problem. That's where I'm.
You know, you can pick a team just because you want to pick them. You don't have to pick them to try and trump me in some way.
No. But like, I can pick another team if I don't think you're gonna pick FlyQuest.
Just pick who you want.
Fine. I'll just pick FlyQuest. Why not? Okay. Let me preface this by saying the calling isn't the greatest. Ins as IGL is still very rough around the edges. But Vexite is doing okay. He's doing fine. Netic is actually doing pretty damn good. You know, like a couple of rough events, couple of rough maps here or there, but I think what you want from him is you're starting to see the potential, actual growth as he plays tougher opponents. Regali, pretty damn good for most of a tournament until he gets to a big fish where he doesn't fry quite as hard. And now you're bringing in a JKS that everyone has been wanting JKS back on an OS main squad again, and the Oceanic fans get what they want. They get an upgrade over Liaz, who, you know, I have to say, Liaz, he did have his moments. He definitely had great games, but in terms of sheer reliability and star power, you just can't beat JKS. So, it's a bit of a shame, but if this roster does not work, you're gonna have to kick ins and get Dexter in, because I don't know if there's enough Oceanic talent left to chop and change. This has to be the best that this kind of can get without, you know, I guess swapping out Regali for Zaiwu or something. if we're gonna keep 3 or 4 OS players, that's probably about as good as it's gonna get.
Yeah, outside of making like an ins for a European import IGL sort of move, you know, maybe you can somehow convince Sin to come over or something like that, you know, some kind of IGL move that's a guaranteed like upgrade. There's not that many clear paths for this team to get much better than this.
I do think Dexter called better than this current version of FlyQuest. I still maintain that. You know, I think the biggest problem FlyQuest always had was that they didn't have instigators. They didn't have people that wanted to like force duels or take fights or, you know, have any sort of leadership qualities about him. So Dexter had to almost always do things. You know, Inns wasn't an aggressive piece. Vexite wasn't. Liaz isn't. Regali can be sometimes, but it kind of just depends on the day or like the vibe for him, I think. So I have a lot of respect for what Dexter brought to the table. I just don't see that same level out of Inns in the calling capacity. And he is hitting his career worst form, not only coming into this year, but even in the shift to in-game leading, it's not been particularly pretty there either. You know, he's maybe had like a map where he does well, but Dexter also had those. So, like, what is the real trade-off here?
The trade-off is just that you bring in Netic and you think overall maybe we've just gotten better. Like, you're trying to just push that ceiling ever higher. It hasn't exactly worked out as you dreamed of, but the addition of JKS for Liaz, I think, will be overall like that'll get them to where they hoped they'd be on the fragging front when they cut Dexter for Netic. I think in their minds, Inns could maintain a certain amount of his level. Just forgot how important it was. Well, how difficult it is for an IGL to actually maintain their fragging, like to keep training, pracking to the same extent on their mechanics. It's just a ridiculous demand of an IGL. It's quite often near impossible for them to maintain their mechanics in the same way. So they found themselves in an awkward spot with that move. Well, you're right, the calling isn't as good. I don't think there's like a massive gulf. It's not like we've gone from the best IGL in the world to the worst. We've gone from the second worst to the worst, which is a downgrade, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I admire the audacity, the attempt. I like the philosophy behind it of just, let's just add more fraggers. What do we got to lose? We weren't out calling people anyway. Let's just keep trying this. And so far, it's still hits of like, this is Regali plus 4 Aussies. Oh, well, 4 OCE players. And it's just not quite, it just doesn't quite hit. It's like, it does feel like sometimes I'm just looking at a really strong AWPer who, hell, when he's a rifle, looks like at times the best rifle on the team. And then a bunch of guys who just don't quite match the bill.
Don't quite get it.
They're not quite there, yeah, and it's a bit rough, but this is an event where basically this makes or breaks my opinion of this core. I don't think my opinion on JKS and Regali probably won't change off the back of this event. But if the rest of them can't show me something, I don't see like a consistent Vex site. I don't see at least a call or two that I'm like, ooh, In's cooked something here, or In's understood what the game was giving him here. Like if there's something that doesn't quite, if there's something from each of these players that isn't there, I think they will crash and burn. And I'll be pretty much done with this roster.
I think what was sad is that watching them during the major, I was on Elfish Guy's co-stream with like Trav and you know, we were watching the FlyQuest games. We were just thinking, when was the last time and like this team ever won a best of 3 in a major? And I remember like live looking for this stat and finding out they'd actually just never won a best of 3 in a major. And you know, that's why they don't make it out of the second stage or the first stage or
first stage in this case. Yeah.
It's one of the struggles that they've had is that when they're faced with international competition and they have an opportunity to make it, they are actually a team that seems to have like a choking problem, genuinely. And there are certain pieces you can blame for that. There are others that, you know, should, you know, I think, you know, players like Inz or Liaz or, you know, even Urcast, they should shoulder that responsibility more, and you know, the younger players should be kind of shielded from that. But it does seem like it's just sort of carried over roster after roster. It almost hasn't mattered which team it's been. It's, you know, regardless of the configuration of the OS players, they just cannot win a best of 3 since the demolition of the Renegades and that roster of old. So yeah, it's sad times, but I do think if Inns can't make this work within the first 1 to 3 months with JKS, like genuinely just bring. I actually think you should bring Dexter back. As weird as that people will think that is, you know, Inns is a top quality player and has been for so much of his career, but he is hitting career low numbers now, today, and you know, we're coming up on by the time you end that 3-month cycle, 9 months where that will have been the case. So just bring in an in-game leader that's putting up similar numbers and is actually a career-bred in-game leader, please. I beg.
Yeah, might have to be done. Would feel it'd be a bit rough to do like basically the inverse move, just like remove Netic and bring back Dexter. Feel a bit silly.
That would be silly.
So just to avoid having egg on your face, I guess you just bring Dexter in for Inns and be like, oh.
We figured it out.
Who wanted an old form version of Inns anyway? We've got Netic. This is what we wanted all along. It would be a bit awkward. So, yeah, no, I get it. Right. Let's see. Who do I want to close out my underdogs? Is it okay to say I don't really want anyone? Because instinctively, just based off how they played last season... Actually, no, they weren't that bad at Fisher either. It is tempting to go with Complexity. Because I know what they're roughly going to look like. Since Alicia's removal, yeah, I'm going to go with Complexity. Totally not spoiling the player that sells it for me. Yes, my favourite minion is just absolutely beasting out. Yeah, call it Freudian if you want, but it's the only reason anyone's excited about Complexity, let's be real. Grim has been fantastic this year, and they still have like JT just comes out and it's not like he calls a masterpiece every game, but he also sometimes just frags as well. I'm like, how does JT still manage to do everything? But look, Grim, when there's no Elige to get in his way, is a legit star rifler at a tier 1 level. Like, he can go out there and frag with the best of them. And I don't get what it is about Elige that kind of just throws him off. But post Elige, he's been fantastic, and I've loved seeing it. Another player who took a really important step up for this roster, because when they had first announced this team, you're looking at it, you're like, Sixy and Nix, or Nix, you're like, this is so fucked. Like, this is dreadful. Like, as much as I think Sixy's had, like, there's been times when I'm like, maybe it's worth taking a risk if I'm like the 4th best NA team, just take a risk on Sixy. Both Sixy and Nix at the same time, like, raw, I'm just kind of checking out. But then they come into events, Grim's banging heads. Holzerk is actually, like, really good, and JT seems to have his finger on the pulse. Why the hell not? You know, why the hell not? Especially as an underdog pick, this is a crazy sort of value team who have been, time and time again, just far better than the average underdog roster has been. They've made playoffs at big events. They've beaten strong rosters. This is a good team. Led, obviously, by one man on the rifle, primarily. But the AWP has been there. The calling's been strong. And Sixy and Nix, it can only get better. So, why the hell not?
Yeah, they're... Complexity are curious because they're almost striking me with early M80 vibes a little bit. Like, it seems to be more of like a development project in terms of, well, one, Nyx and Sixy would have been 100% cheaper than most of the other players that you could potentially market to this roster if you wanted to win more today. But I think because Grim has sort of expressed a very solid floor since he's been kind of the main star guy on the team, it kind of gives more room for Sixy or Nyx to actually just have some of the, like, occasionally they do have pop-off games, like between one or both of them sometimes. They do just have these pop-offs, but their variance is so much, is crazy. They can have like a 30 bomb one game and then 6 kills in the next. And it can be a little bit hard to deal with, but when Grim is kind of performing in the way that he is alongside Holzerk, like that pair combo can shield a lot of that ugliness.
Yeah, I mean, look, where would Nyx be? Like, earlier this year, that I remember this, I was looking up for the exact date. It's around April. Nyx has a super strong train against Falcons, and I remember that stuck in my mind. I was like, what the hell, this guy? He's no one, but he's also had some strong maps against Furia and Pain, and who can forget his 3-map beatdown of Imperial Valkyries? I mean, what a roster. He really took them down a peg. But yeah, he's had some strong maps against some strong teams. Notably, obviously, just keeps being good against Falcons. But especially the Brazilians as well, he's had a good run against. So, look, I agree. I think that floor setting by the other guys, and the fact that they can win maps without Nyx and Sixy, it kind of lets them skate by. And it also kind of creates this world where you're like, I remember a good Nyx map. Then you look at his stats, you're like, against top 50 opponents, he's ranked 0.90. Like, his rating is 0.90. You're like, holy shit, he's been dreadful. Yet I still have this glimmer of something positive in my head.
Yeah, there's room for improvement. Let's just leave it at that for him. Again, I think when we talked about the moves for Complexity once upon a time, it was very much from the angle of, hey, Complexity needs to kind of reduce costs. And, losing Elige and, bringing in these two pieces felt like that was a good cost-cutting measure, actually, while still having some prospective talent in there. So it felt like solid GMing if it wasn't for the fact that it was probably largely economics based. There was a lot of fiscal responsibility in this move.
Yeah, the shareholders, round of applause. They're like, oh, yeah, that's a good one. That's a
yeah. We're maintaining ranking, right, and maybe stock goes up eventually.
Yeah, no, I mean, Complexity this year, they're currently at 19 on the VRS. Like, they've done a solid job, like, of building back up, essentially. Because they plummeted. They dropped, how low is that? 30th?
Yeah.
This year when they initially put the roster together, but, they climbed back up, fell on a bit, climbed back up again. They're maintained fairly well, considering, again, how abysmal some of these players have been. Like, and how much we kind of predicted they would be. Because we're like, Nyx has got something where you
sure
like
about this?
You DM your American friend, you're like, yo, is this Nyx guy secretly amazing, or is he truly just fucking no one?
The more surprising one was almost certainly 60. Like, wait, people are actually a big org like Complexity is taking a risk on 60? Are we?
I've seen more from 60 in NA play than I have from Nyx, and that's kind of kind of the problem if you're Nyx. Like, you couldn't even impress me in NA. Like, why should I believe in you now? And that was kind of my DM'd question to like some Americans. I was like, why did they do this?
Yeah.
And it turns out my assessment of he can't even impress me in NA was correct. Although it does seem like the roles have not been to his favor as well. Just to give him a solid, just to give him a shout out. Like,
yeah,
the numbers have shifted a bit in terms of what he's supposed to be doing between the teams.
Well, it leaves me in a spot where I guess I'm just gonna have to pick this team because I just don't. Oh God, I'm stuck between Bait and Heroic, and I think I'm gonna end up going with Bait.
Knew it.
Yeah, I think I just have to go with Bait on this. The problem I have is that I like the heroic pickups. I like Grix as a pickup, but I've not seen what I'm supposed to see out of Nilo. And Bait to me have always been a team that I've kind of I basically should see the trajectory. Like I saw the trajectory for so much of their tier 2 growth, with NPL having, career high season after season, into they get to LAN events, and I just think they shit the bed quite a bit.
They do a lot, yeah.
Yeah, they actually have matchups where they probably should win 90% of the time against teams that they have beaten online, or they've beaten teams that are better than the teams that they lose to, and then they just shit the bed. But this team has talent. They genuinely have so many great shooters on the roster, like Alex, really solid, Kenzie, NPL. Like the roster of riflers they have are, I mean, to be honest, compared to some tier 1 teams, actually not that far behind in my opinion. They just simply don't have, weirdly, I just don't have like very good clutch factor on this team. I don't know what it is, but like their means to getting entries and openers in like early mid rounds is so good, but I swear they cannot clutch to save their lives. I rarely see moments where they pull together, against teams that are lower ranked than them, or teams that just play way too many online officials. Yeah, each of these guys can pull off a clutch like that. But when you're against, when the stage gets brighter, it's like nobody knows how to use their hands anymore in those types of moments. Like I think the environment and the grandiose of the event actually gets to these guys more than some other teams, but that can only happen to them so many times before something just cracks and they break through. And I'm kind of just hoping that happens for them, because they've been genuinely so good for so long, and then they just have these shortfalls that like undermine the path that they basically laid out for themselves.
Yeah, I've been quite attached to the development of Bait and the progress they've made, and they slowly keep crawling up. They've never taken a big leap up. They've just constantly plugged away and got slowly better and better. And you're right, every time they go to the big LAN, you're like, oh, finally I get to see some of that, that play that got them there. They kind of let you down a bit, when it comes to the major, for example. That 2-1 loss to Linvision, brutal, absolutely brutal. Like, you should not be losing that game. Like, I get it, Linvision has some talent, but so do you. You have a lot of talent. And you're a team who play, week in, week out, really strong European rosters. If this wasn't LAN play, I feel like you'd have smashed them. Like, you probably wouldn't have had these kinds of struggles. So no, a genuine issue they have for me is just the youth and the inexperience and the lack of, I think, just confidence in themselves in the LAN sort of situations. That's been a repeated problem. In terms of the individuals, I don't see a lot of room for improvement in terms of like just clear upgrades for them. Like this piece is weak, this piece is weak. It's like, yeah, maybe you could do better than a Senthiel. Maybe if you look through Ukraine, you can find an even more dynamic and explosive talent than Kenzie, just because it's Ukraine, you know. We were talking off air about TNL. Like if you got Davi in there, sure, yeah, it can be like, yeah, that's better. But there's not exactly a long list of better players than him. There's not a long list of who can play MPL's roles better than he does. Like he's been outstanding as the primary rifle star, but also the IGL. Very few players can ever achieve that. So they've got an outstanding core. They've got pretty strong pieces on every position. If they get it right, hell, they can make stage 2. They can put up a fight in stage 2. But there's always that niggling just doubt in your mind where you're watching Bait play and you're like, it is LAN. When do they screw this up? When do they throw it away? When do they doubt themselves and lose the big game? That's always going to be there.
I think the sad part is that from each of their failings, it seems like it's a different piece that seems to have its problems. And like typically NPL actually hasn't struggled in most of those moments. You know, I'm talking about players that, you know, seem to fail in these clutch moments. NPL is actually typically not that guy either. I mean, often he's not alive for those types of moments because he's so aggressive, but he's been a consistent piece. And then you look at that like Lin Vision game and it's like, where did NPL go? And, you know, I think that's maybe one of the problems that this Bait team has is that they actually, you know, based on the reputation and these players and where they've come from, like they don't actually necessarily have like a proper leader's leader. Like they don't have a proper sort of captain to the squad as they do just sort of role-based in-game leader. Like I'm sure NPL calls, but is he a leader of men? You know, in the same way that you kind of want someone like a Carrigan or a Cadian or a you know these pieces that actually can sort of rally the troops in these dire moments. And you know maybe that doesn't have to necessarily come from your in-game leader, but there has to be like a morale conduit of some kind on the team. And we've seen other pieces that have operated that way, like Jax, or you know sometimes people have said that about like Crims, for example. There can be these other pieces that do bring the spirits up in dire moments. JL, I suppose, is another one that you can mention. Yeah, just I don't know that any of these guys are necessarily that guy, and maybe that's a transformation that needs to happen for them to ultimately break through.
Yeah, we'll see if they can do it with this team. I mean, I do think it does feel still like there has to be that has to kind of come from MPL. Like that's kind of where it has to come from. But I think they need to figure that out. That's just quite simply because the pieces are there. There's no clear roster move that's just going to magically fix anything. You've got what it takes. Just go and do it. That's the Bait story right now. I've got the final pick, and here's the awkward part. I have a favorite left to select. And obviously there's a big name still lying around in FaZe. None of us want them, though. And I understand why. Brokey back in for Simple. We saw Brokey this year. It wasn't good. To be polite, it wasn't good. Simple, with his dynamic aggressiveness, like his willingness to just go out and fight, was putting up decent numbers. But sometimes he did lose the occasional map on the series just because of his silly deaths. But at the same time, he was also winning them series, which is something Brokey really wasn't doing this year. And his front foot first nature kind of also works really nicely with a player like Frozen, as far as, you know, he doesn't want to be the first guy in. He doesn't want to be the first point of contact. But give him a little bit of something to work with and he'll just mop everyone up. So for me, I really like that phase. And I've been quite interested to see how they play with Simple this season, if it weren't for the buyout, which, by the way, I don't understand how they've structured this contract for the buyout to still be unpayable, given that his actual contract expires in like September or October, something like that. Like, how's there so few months left? And
if you want him now, it comes at a premium, I guess.
It's ridiculous. That's just not how buying out a contract should work, but it's Na'Vi. They've decided to do this. They're going to get nothing for him, and he's going to leave on a free. You reap what you sow. So there we go. I, for those reasons, also want to avoid picking FaZe, because it's just, there's been very little for me to believe in this year, even with the Brokey specifics. We've talked about it. The Karrigan calling hasn't been altogether too strong. Elige and Rain are treading on each other's toes, and both seem pretty relative to what we'd expect. The only player who's actually managed to be respectable in terms of his level is Frozen. Like, it's not been the empty calorie Frozen. It's been star, borderline superstar Frozen this year. It's been great to watch, but just isn't enough. So I'm going to pick... I still don't get why they made this move, but I guess when needs must, you go and sign Kersey. But GamerLegion, you can't not pick them. Like, with the riflers they have in Rez, in PR, hell, in Towson, he's just coming along so strongly. I have to believe they'll be good. I mean, they were the only team until the semi-final who were able to beat that Mutarus-led Saw, which is apparently near impossible. I was worried after a map and a half of their wildcard series that they'd magically turned to shit since signing Kersey. I was like, look, I wasn't that big a fan of him, but I didn't think he'd make you terrible. But it turns out that was just Susp carrying his dead roster to something resembling relevance before finally his strength fails and they just get utterly thrashed. So I still think this is an incredibly strong team. Still think that the ZTR Ash duo create some really strong, just winning Counter-Strike and winning positions for their roster. Just in terms of putting them in the right places. Rez has been... Oh, he's just showing off sometimes. Like when he just walks out, just taps someone. Like, it's just gorgeous. But he's doing it left, right, and center, just feeling himself. And of course, PR, the prodigy. He's not currently officially frontrunner for Rookie of the Year, but seeing as he is, like, not 22, does feel like he should be. Like, in spirit, he's my Rookie of the Year, because he's the one who actually is the age of a rookie, and that kind of feels right to me. But he's been fantastic. He was great in Fisher, despite the losses. I think this roster... Ash admitted they didn't play their A game in Belgrade. Didn't need to say it. We all saw it, mate, but that's okay. This should be stronger. This should be better. They are facing one of my underdogs in the first game, but I've not really put that much strategy into this. I just think pick the best team on the board, and I think GamerLegion are outstanding.
Picking based on vibes, I can appreciate that. See, when I picked Tyloo first, I did think they play VP first, which is, not an unlosable game. But if they beat VP,
heavy favorites, yeah.
If they're beating VP, then they're beating GamerLegion in complexity. That's just the way I thought about it. Like, if they win that opening round game based on the highs of coming off of a Fisher win, they're beating GamerLegion in complexity on that other side.
They're losing to GamerLegion,
both of them have.
That's okay.
Both those teams have shown some weakness. Let's just say that. I will say one of the positives for GamerLegion is that Ash, that guy heckin' loves Overpass. Always has. As soon as that map got removed, he's like, why do they keep removing the maps I love? They removed Vertigo, he's like, come on, man, that's another map I loved. He has almost always, with the teams that he's coached, made them very, very good on Overpass. And I don't expect that to be any different here as well for GamerLegion. They didn't even... I think they banned Anubis, didn't they? They used to...
they played in 2024, but in 2025... No, they played it 8 times this year. But they played all 7 maps to a certain extent, so... It's one of the 3 maps they didn't really play. Like, they played a lot of Ancient, Inferno, Nuke, and Mirage. The other 3, they played Dust 2 twice, Train 6 times, Anubis 8 times, so...
Sure, okay. I was thinking that I just hadn't remembered many games where they played Anubis. But they're not going to be sad about that leaving the pool.
No, not particularly. And Overpass last year, they played it 19 times in 2024 and won it 79%.
Hell yeah.
So,
Anyway, that's kind of all I've got to say. I haven't really seen too much of Kersey. There were games I was watching at Fisher, but the GamerLegion ones were not the ones that I was always watching.
That's fair enough. I mean, he's a player I've had exposure to through his time on Gen 1 and various other Tier 2 teams that I've watched other players play against, really. Because I've never been overly thrilled by Kersey as a player, like in terms of his performance on the server. But what he's done, basically, that ends up, I think, netting him this move, is throughout his career, he's basically guaranteed to come out of an event with a 1.13 rating, like roughly. He's just guaranteed to sit round about there. He's ultra consistent, and that's one of the things Ash has always mentioned as far as his philosophy for recruitment is about consistency. Like if I can't see it time and time again, why would I pick them up? So for him, this move made a lot of sense. For me, I was like, all right, prove it, because I saw very little in Towson, and then you showed me a whole other player, basically. So far, Kirsty's played one event, it's not been great, but that doesn't mean it's going to be tragic the entire time.
It's got to beat Slen though. That's the bar.
So far, it's not. So far, he's at 0.96 rated. I mean, I guess he's got a slightly better KPR, like so far than Slen was averaging, which was abysmal. But it's not a great start, and apparently it mirrors very nicely with Slend, because Slend also opened up his run with a series against Wildcard, like his time on GamerLegion, and performed fairly well against Wildcard, and then the average slipped. So hopefully he's not cursed, as the name would imply. Hopefully he's just integrating.
Yeah, let's frame it that way.
But all right, those are the picks. I feel like, do you want to touch on FaZe before we take off, before we close this up? Because I had a bit of a ramble, but
I just think I've already said about my thoughts on FaZe for the longest time. You know, we should be critiquing Carrigan. We should be critiquing the roster.
Right.
Frozen Elige actually should be enough in most cases. Like, Rain isn't playing terribly shit either. He's not playing the best Counter-Strike he's ever played in his career, but he's not playing that shit to justify this team not performing. So,
yeah, the real question mark on this team is obviously, that Elige guy. Brought him in for a reason. Haven't quite seen that pay off so far. And he also took a bit of an uptick, like had some decent defense with Simple. So I guess there's always that bonus. But overall, over the course of this year, just not been impressed with what I've seen from majority of the players.
Unless Brokey comes back and just has like incredible amounts of aura somehow, it just does feel a bit sad to be like, hey, we were gonna kick you for Simple, but he cost too much, so you're back in the roster. Like, that's just a bit.
I know we definitely wanted you. It's just sorry, just checking how much was in my wallet. Never mind. Let's just not talk about that. We really wanted you. Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, we love you. Listen, we love Simple too, but we love money more, and it just turns out that he costs too much. Anyway. Disappointing roster. Disappointing team. But what's new?
Exactly. And that's, the review of every... I guess, like, everyone who looks at FaZe now is just kind of like the stereotype, like Tiger Mum, sort of just disappointed. Like, we wanted so much more, and we can never be happy.
They'll make it to a playoffs. They will just randomly make it to a playoffs, and we'll be like, oh, maybe, and then they'll just
our cousin's child, like, makes the grand final every time, so...
Yeah.
It's just not good enough. But all right, that's going to be it for the episode. Obviously, we're going to have another episode for Stage 2, but without Yumi, who has decided to abandon you all again. It is what it is. He's a busy man, living the high life.
It's a family trip.
That's what he calls it.
It is!
It's going to be out in Lanzarote.
Yeah, well, not true either.
Sure.
But let's not dox myself here.
No, I'm not going to tell him where you're actually going, but he's definitely off partying. He's neglecting his duties. That's fine. We'll have some fill-in guests. I'm not sure if I'm going to do just one-on-one with someone else or find two people and do a threesome. You'll have to find out. So tune in Friday. But all right, leave a like if you enjoyed. Leave a comment to me your thoughts on all of our picks. Who would you have gone for? And in which scenario would you have taken them? Like, maybe there's some strategy that we overlooked. But yeah. Sub for more content. Remember that members get access to videos early and more videos in general. And we'll see you next time. Goodbye.